It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Spirit Café from wherever you're coming from in our world today. My name is Cheryl, and it is my honor and my privilege to co-host this show with Reverend B. But before we go any further, I'd like to just acknowledge the lands that we are on Turtle Island. So just, if you don't mind, taking a deep breath, move to a quiet space and acknowledge with me. We acknowledge the indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral ceded and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. Miigwech. And now I'd like to introduce Rev B to come in and introduce herself.
Well, I'm Barbara Schreiner-Trudell and co-host with my beloved sister Cheryl here on Spirit Café. And we're having fun with these courageous conversations. So today, our guest is another beloved sister of mine, Gino Walker, who I met a number of years ago. She is a singer. She is an activist. She is a spiritual leader. She is a force to be reckoned with. So please just get ready. Strap your seatbelts on, because here's Ms. Gino Walker.
Oh, I love it.
How are you, my dear?
Good morning, sweet angels. Oh, it is good to see you, Rev B, as always. And Cheryl, so great to be here with you.
Thank you, Gino.
Beautiful.
Likewise. Very excited.
Hey, in the house. Oh.
I love it. I love it. So you've been, we've been talking a little bit over the last little while about some of the things that you're doing, and you've had some interesting things. Plus, you and I did a show together, one of your shows where we talked about some of the issues for Black people in the U.S., but, it goes right across the border. It's up here as well. In Canada, we're not,
immune. You're not immune.
No, we're not.
We're nice, but nice could be a 4-letter word too. It is. So tell us a little bit about your journey, and what do you think is really important for people to know right now when it comes to race relations and social inequity, or wherever you want to take it, sweetie. We'll roll.
Woo! That's a big bowl of conversation.
It is.
And it's one that we absolutely we have to engage in. I'm in San Diego, and I work with Universal Spirit Center. And one of the programs that I help start there is called our Racial Equality Project. And that came about when we were in the shutdown and George Floyd. And, for so many of the other people that I worked with, they were in a state of just being shocked and appalled. And at this juncture in my life, I was like, well, it happens all the time. And they were looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, he's not the first. And unfortunately, he won't be the last.
Exactly.
And so this journey for me has really been about awakening my senses again to recognize that I have a voice, I have to use it. And in all honesty, as a Black woman, a woman of color, I really don't like that term, a Black woman. I like a Black woman.
Yeah.
I had kind of gotten very sedated about situations.
Yeah.
And would I had many accounts came to my mind where I'm in mixed company and people would say things that I thought were out of line, but I'd brush it off like, oh, they didn't mean it.
Mm.
And this journey of working in the Racial Equality Project really helped me spotlight that I had to show up. You know, I have many friends that we would get into knockdown screaming fights because we have that nothing's going to change conversation. Doesn't matter what you're going to do, nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
And I remember the first day that hit me in my gut that if that's where I'm living, I'm as a big a part of the problem.
Mhm.
Yes.
I'm part of the problem because in that sentiment, and I said back to my friends, I said, you're absolutely right. When I finally got clear that nothing will change if I don't change. Nothing will change if I don't change.
True.
You know, and it's not that I'm saying I'm going to change the world, but I know I knew I had to change. And so, with that, one of the things that I brought to the center, we took a trip to Montgomery, Alabama,
Yes.
to experience history, to explore this uncomfortable conversation. And initially, it was about 12 to 15 people. So I was very excited that many people wanted to go. And I have to say that outside of myself, I was only a Black person. We did have a Latino man, but just due to some people getting ill, that ended up being only about, I think, 6 of us that went.
Yeah.
And so we were in Montgomery, Alabama. Where we stayed was right off of the riverfront. And I did not know that this was the street they marched the slaves from the ships.
Wow.
Once they docked, they marched them down the street like livestock
Mm.
to the center of this street. There's a little go round there, a roundabout. There's the word, a roundabout. And they've made it, they put a beautiful fountain there, but that roundabout served as where they would separate families, break off the slaves. Uh, and so there was that. So there's an energy already that was there and present. And then we go to walk the bridge of Selma
Mm.
and realizing that once again, I mean, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic grade school, high school, and did 1 year Christian college. I was like, please get me out.
That's funny.
Get me out of here. Um, but looking back on my teaching, I was taught really nothing and very little of the true essence of our history.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that the Pettus Bridge, he was a Confederate general that hated slaves.
Mm.
So there's so many things, and not just in the South, but there's so many things in the South
Yeah.
that celebrate this part of our history that we dehumanized individuals, human
Mm.
beings. And so I won't go through the whole trip. I mean, we went to Birmingham and everything. We went to Birmingham. We did the Freedom Riders. Everything flipped for me when I went to the Legacy Museum. Brian Stevenson, his organization, Equal Justice Initiative. That's early morning here for me. I employ or I encourage everyone, if you have not been to the Legacy Museum,
Mhm.
it is our history.
Yeah.
And when I say our, I speak of us as a global world that we have had slaves throughout century.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But one of the things that changed with when when they kidnapped Africans, they created a system rather, well, and I got to say they knew what they were doing. They created a system that started to enter into race.
Mhm.
Prior to that, race was not a part of it. But they made the separation of white and black, and they made Africans, they made our ancestors um, to be ignorant animals, where in Africa, some of the most advanced technologies were taking place, have
Mhm.
been, and still they don't know how some of the things were done. So the Legacy Museum, one of the things that I think is so amazing about them is that, well, I'll just say this and then I know you guys want to talk, so I'll just say this and then let you, don't get me wound up.
Come on
um,
out of your box, Gino. Come on.
one of the people on the trip said at some point that, I thought I'd see more things about slavery. And I said to him, I said, everything is about slavery. He's like, no, no, no. I mean, and I said, no, I understand what you're saying with the chains and the whips. I said, but everything is about slavery still to today. And so he kind of like, well, I said, we have to be able to talk about it. You don't agree with me? That's okay.
Mhm.
I'm coming from a different space. After the Legacy Museum, and he couldn't finish it because it was just too much. He was on full. And I get it because I too was on full. Um, the Legacy Museum takes you from the beginning through our our history into now, into how we incarcerate people of color at a rate that's unfreaking believable.
Yeah.
How it affects every area of our lives, our health, our food. Um, it's so overwhelming, and they do it with such beauty and grace and knowledge and information. It is one of the most amazing experiences. I kind of lost it when I got to the lynching aspect of the museum, and for two reasons. Initially, I was under the impression that um, they have these jars of dirt that you can collect. You can literally go to a space where an ancestor, someone from your family. My initial understanding was that was where they were hung or lynched at. But I came to find out that it wasn't just that, it was also finding out where your ancestors, the ground that they had walked. And so putting this dirt in the jar and putting a name on it was really honoring our ancestors. And I realized I had never, ever, ever done that.
Wow.
And so now my family and I are in the process of that because I think that's part of me. And I said to my family, that's part of us healing, that we honor those that took the walk for us.
Of course. Well, it's exciting to hear what you're talking about, because I think, and I love that you're talking about it's our history.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all of us. It's not about Black lives. It's about how the Black lives were impacted by the white lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The indigenous lives were impacted again
Yes.
by the white lives. And I think looking at that from a different perspective, this isn't your history, this is our history.
Exactly. Yeah, we all took a part in it. You know, we play a role, and we need to be accountable for that as well, which I think is so important.
And it's so insidious. I want to just share briefly a situation that happened to me on Sunday.
Mm.
It's like it took a second before it landed what had actually happened. And then I was like a little upset with myself. I didn't get it quicker, but I did a memorial service in the afternoon. And one of the, people were coming up to me and thanking me for the words that I spoke. It was not a one-on person. It was a cemetery had me come in and do a positive, upbeat, loving,
Oh,
message. And yeah,
yes.
it's really lovely. We had music, we had that. But after it was over, I had people coming up and chatting with me. And I'm talking to a group of 3 Black women. And the one woman is telling me about her mother dying during COVID and
Mm.
how she couldn't be there with her and she gets the
Mm.
call at work and this and that. So we're having this very moving, emotional talk. A gentleman comes and interrupts us and says to me, I have a joke for you, and proceeds to start telling the joke. So the women go, we'll see you later. Thank you so much. And off they go. And it was as he started talking, I thought, talk about white privilege, white male privilege. You think you can come in and stop our conversation dead in its tracks to tell me a joke.
Mhm.
Really bad one after that. Like,
And that makes it even worse.
yeah. And and I was so irritated. Like I didn't even know what to say to him at that point. And I wish, as soon as he stepped up, I'd said, we're not quite done yet. Give me a minute.
Mm.
So that I could have my focus. So I tried to find the women afterwards to apologize, and I couldn't. But I thought, at least I'm seeing it now,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now the
Mhm.
next step will be seeing it instantly so I can address it instantly.
Yes.
Then afterwards going, but I thought, how bold, like how inconsiderate do you need to be to interject in that way, and especially with something so trivial?
Mhm.
It
Mm.
was.
I have been frequently saying, along with our racial equality project, I do a show which Rev V came on called Kitchen Conversations.
Yeah.
And it's about addressing racial inequalities in every capacity. Um, and I have said that, we hear, I'm sure you hear from family and friends, people talk about the good old days. I want things to go back to the way they used to be. And I said to someone that in our community that was a little disturbed by some of the conversations that I have brought in through Kitchen Conversations and our Racial Equality Project, that we are in the process of learning a new language and
Yes.
learning how to live at a higher level of consciousness.
That's
So
it.
there will be no going back. And
Mhm.
those that just cannot understand that, they're leaving to go on the other side so that they can have clarity and help move this consciousness.
Mhm.
And so I love that because there's so many things that we don't see sometimes in the moment because it's been the norm.
Mm.
Exactly.
And people would say, and I would have said before, oh, that's just a little too much. But I get it. I
Mm.
get it that these things have been so instilled in us.
Yeah.
It's such uh, an easy thing for us to accept that we don't see it. So
Mhm.
when you do see it, I'm like, yay. When I see it, I'm like, I saw it. Now the next time I have to say something, but I
Yes.
Yes.
saw it. I felt it,
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that awareness, because awareness is power.
Yes.
So, when we get to that place where we get it sooner rather than later, that makes a big difference. Cheryl, you had something you wanted to.
Well, I also think what's important for me is the books I've been reading and the education I've been taking, and so that I do, I am more aware. I think because it's ingrained in us, it's something that we have to acknowledge, but also continually talk about and discuss and educate and say, I am a racist. I grew up a racist because I was programmed that way, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean that I'm racist today, but I have racist. How can I say? There's probably still some racist some things in me that I'm not aware of, that I really truly and hope that as I learn more and am able to have this conversation more, that I'm able to release all that and let it go. One of the things for me is the discomfort of asking questions and saying the wrong thing, right? Because right now it's all about the language we use and not offending people and all this kind of thing. So how do we have an honest, open discussion, feeling safe that we can do that, and that we will make mistakes and we will say the wrong things, and that's okay. I liked what you said earlier, Gino, that it's okay if we even differ in our opinions, that if we don't agree, but at least having the conversation brings us closer to that point. Whereas if we are too afraid and we let fear drive us, we're never going to get there.
That's so true. So true.
That is absolutely true. I have said for a long time, politically correct, PC, is one of the worst doggone things.
Yes.
Because it makes you afraid. You can't know. And if, we are all different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't speak for every Black woman and every Black person in the world. We have to be able to hear the question, be able to, there are questions sometimes that have been asked of me, things that have been said. And my work has been to love beyond. Love beyond.
Yes.
Nice.
Because sometimes the questions are, and they're going to be, they're not a little, uncomfortable. But if we don't have that, if we can't have an honest conversation, during the trip in Montgomery, we would have powwows after we had our experiences for the day. Yeah. And there were times where people were like, well, I don't want to say that. I said, see, that we can't do. Because now you're going to take an assumption off into your world, and I have no idea what you're going to create out of that. But chances are you're going to create something from an old paradigm, from old program.
Yes.
And so I think it's important that in our community, I try to let people know that we have a racial equality project. We meet every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. We meet on Zoom, and I encourage and invite people. When people go, well, you're only looking at it from one side. I said, I can't look at it from your side. I'm not white. I said, but I encourage, please, let's have the conversation.
Let's
do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will put this question to you, ladies, because someone said to me, I go to church to have peace and feel love. And I believe that this is where I believe conversations like this should take place in the church. What do you say to that?
I agree completely.
100%. 100%. Yeah, I mean, that's going to bring up a whole nother issue in me, right? When we call ourselves religious and we go to church and we live an unchristian life, which is, I think, what a lot of us do and we don't realize, right? And
Yes.
so that's another issue. But I really do think that, if people are really intentional about growing spiritually and understanding where we come from, who we are, why we're here, which there are so many perspectives about, and that's okay too, right? But having
Yes.
the conversation helps us understand each other and accept each other in a different way, right? Because
Yes.
I can see Barbara and have a conversation with her and say, well, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. I respect where you're coming from, right? And we
Right.
should be able to do that with everybody. And so why not in church? Where else, if not there?
And
Exactly.
as a minister, I think my role is to create some discomfort in order to shift paradigms.
I like that.
Yeah.
Like if I'm just in agreement with you all the time, like, oh, isn't that sweet? Isn't that lovely? Isn't that beautiful? Regardless of what you do, how could you possibly grow? How could you possibly become, more spiritually awakened or heighten your consciousness if nobody ever challenges the belief that's holding you stuck or the belief that's keeping you in this difficult place? I think that for me, having difficult conversations in church or in our centers, our spiritual centers, is not a good idea. It is a must.
Essential.
It is essential that we begin to do that. And we have to be able to make mistakes. We have to be able to open our minds and hearts so that we can learn something new. I pastored a Black church for 11 years, or it was the assistant and then the interim. And I stepped in it a few times from the pulpit. But the nice thing is, people told me. Now I'm a
Yes.
white woman raised in a white city with a white family with a whole white history. It's like I get white. Okay, I get that one. What I need to understand is the different food. Why it is you don't go up and touch a Black woman's hair
Oh,
generally, right?
well,
Like,
can I just say something to that?
go ahead, go ahead.
I changed my hairstyle a lot.
Yes,
And so I had this beautiful afro that I was sporting.
yeah.
And this was back when I traveled a great deal. I traveled, God blessing, I was a touring artist for well over 15 years. And so I'm going into this center, and I'd been there before, but I have this beautiful afro, and the minister's husband comes up to me. He goes, "Oh my God, Gino," and he just grabs my hair. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, your hair is so beautiful." I said, "You don't touch my hair." And he was offended that I called him on that. And so here's the thing that then took place, because I'm pissed off that you touched my hair.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the reason why. And so then there was a little rumbling, because then he shared with people like, touched, hair. She got all blah, 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 blah. And someone said, "Oh, you don't touch Black women's hair." And I said, "Hold on a minute. Wait a minute." I said, "Do you know every Black woman?" They said, "No." I said, "What if I go over to that woman right over there? It was a white woman. And I just go and start rubbing her hair. What do you think she's going to turn around and look at me and do?" And be like, "Hey,
Stop touching my hair.
I said, "But does that mean that every blonde woman doesn't want me to touch her hair?" No. I said, "When you put us all in the same basket," I
Exactly.
said, had he asked me, "Gino, your hair is so beautiful, can I touch it?" I would have been like, "Baby, help
Yeah.
yourself."
Yeah.
But for you to assume that you can do that without asking. To
Exactly.
me, that's the biggest thing. And then it gets,
I agree.
yeah, it's like, all Black people don't want, no. There's quite a few of us though, but
I didn't like it either. Like we were talking
Yeah.
about this the other day. That's why I brought it up again, because I remembered your story of that. And it's like, I have never had somebody come to me. I'm 65 years old. Nobody has ever come up and gone, oh, like nobody's ever done that. Now, when I was expecting, I would have strangers come up and touch my belly. And it's like, I'm sorry. Like, come on, back up here a little bit. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back to continue this conversation. And Rev Z, Elzia, has got a comment in the chat that I want us to
great.
that as well. So we'll be back in just a minute, and you're watching Spirit Cafe on the New Thought Media Network.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome back to Spirit Cafe. And yes, New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. And our guest today, Gino Walker, oh my goodness, you are positively inspiring. I love everything that is coming out of your mouth, women. That's fantastic. So I'm going to go over to Rev Z and read his comment and see, this is his experience, and we honor that. And I'm sure it's experience of many, many, many people. As an amateur genealogist, one of the biggest issues of the enslavement of Black people is that up until 1870, Blacks were listed in the census only by age and gender. As I think he means chattel? I'm not sure.
Chattel.
Chattel is a word? Okay, thank you.
It's property. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
See, okay, thank you for that. I didn't know that. Which is so dehumanizing. And the current mass incarceration does the same by reducing people to a number. Yeah.
When you look at that, with especially incarcerations and stuff, and you look at the way, like I remember, I think Gino and I might have talked about this on her show when I did that one, but my daughter's riding the subway with two other young girls. They were all 15 years old, and they're riding the subway in Toronto, which is a very diverse city. And a woman across from them starts spitting at them and screaming and yelling at them. And it's during COVID. She hasn't got a mask on. She's right in their face. And Genevieve's two friends are Somali Muslims. And so not only do they have the black skin, but now they've got the hijab. And it's like this woman was just targeting them so bad. And we called the police. Now, Genevieve's friends couldn't do that. As young Muslim girls, they are not allowed to kind of do anything much, but especially not involve the police. So we called the police because I was outraged by this. And they were like, well, there's nothing we can do. If the girl that it was directed at doesn't come to us, well, we're not going to do anything. I'd called the mayor's office. I'd called TTC, our transit. And I was really upset about that. And my daughter walked away going, 2 white cops, what do you expect? And I thought, already here she is at 15 years old, disrespecting the police force because she feels they've absolutely disrespected her. And the truth is, she was with these other 2 girls. The 3 of them were together, one group. The assault happened to all 3 of them. Different to the white girl than to the black girls, but it was still an assault. She had to watch her friends be dehumanized, as Rev Elzia would say. And so I look at that and I go, that to me is despicable. Fast forward a number of months, and I'm driving this wee girl home. And, she said, you called the police? And I went, yeah, absolutely. She goes, why? It happens all the time. And I had tears. I thought, how do you live like that, where you're constantly being slammed? And it put everything in a different perspective for me, because I've not had to live with that. And so my mind was really turned at that point, going, what, as a white woman, someone who does have privilege, how do I make a difference? And that's my journey right now, is finding my voice and my ability to do something different, or at least an attempt.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that it just jabs me in my heart, and I have expressed this, and I've had deep conversations with people about it. And so for me, the word minority, if you continue to address me as a minority,
because you're not,
whether you are trying to be for me or against me, you have locked me in a place that automatically says I am less than you.
Absolutely.
And there are people who are like, but no, Gino, I'm fighting for all people of color. Not when you're calling us a minority. You're fighting for people of color, Black people, Indigenous people, Latino people, when you recognize that we are human beings and people just as you. That the only thing that makes you superior is the fact that this story has been built and branded within all of us. And if the story remains the same, if you address people that are different than you as a minority, and they said, well, we're highlighting. I said, you're highlighting the problem. The problem is that you're saying that there's an inequity. If you want to say there's inequality, but when you say that somebody is less than, it's just one of those things that tears my heart, because it just sticks me in a way that then I'm still in the same space. So you're fighting for somebody that's less than. That's not who I am.
No, definitely not. And you know what I love about that, Gino? That's awesome, because Genevieve came home from school a few years ago going, I heard the most ridiculous thing today. And I said, what's that? That women are a minority. She goes, we're the majority of the population. We can't be a minority. And I mean, if you look at people of color, I'm sorry, white people are the minority. We may act like we're in the majority, but we're not. Christians in the minority, right? Like, if when you really want to look at that, it's because that's not what it's about. It's about creating separation.
It is about creating separation.
And that's one of the things that I've learned in some of the work that I've been doing, that, everything that's been created around race and racism has been engineered. Yes. And it has been done so. And I think you mentioned that earlier, Gino, that it's not by any mistake. It's been done consciously. right, with purpose.
Yeah.
And one of the things for me is when we talk about dehumanizing, I believe that, when let's look at it, and I'm going to name it, white men created and built the society that we're talking about. And we've had to, as women, as Black women and men and people who are different in any way, LGBTQTW, we've all had to fight for our rights to come forward and create change. And no man was going to do that without that kind of pushback, right?
Absolutely.
And so for me as well, like when I read things about incarceration, and the number of people who are Black that are in prison, the number of people who have mental health issues, that's a further dehumanizing of a group of people. And so for me, these are systemic issues that we can't just address one thing at a time. We have to actually create a shift in the culture that we have created, the society that we've created, and go back to cause instead of trying to always address the effect. So that's something that I've really become very aware of and conscious of. So I'd invite you to share what your thoughts are.
Sure. I love that, because what we see is that it bleeds in every area of our life. So it doesn't matter if it's about race, it could be about sex, it could be about gender, it could be in the workplace. I mean, it's this dis-ease that just breeds in every place, because we've created a system that there has to be a hierarchy, and then those that fall up underneath that. And it's a system that, the pandemic showed in so many ways that and I don't want to use the woke culture, but I want to say that awaken our spirits, awaken people in a way that there was a call that, wait a minute, we're better than this. We can do more than this. I had this beautiful transgender on my show on Kitchen Conversations, and I was so blown away. And then I thought, well, yeah, but of course. So she's telling a story, and she is saying how in parts of San Diego, in the Hillcrest area, that she feels uncomfortable. And I'm surprised, because the Hillcrest area is a gay community. And I said, well, why would you feel threatened there? It's a gay community. And she said, even in the gay community, I'm like, oh my God, when can we ever stop?
Yeah.
Even within the own structure, we're all fighting for this equality. This is your brother, your sister, and yet you still, because you are, and I'm going to say it like you sure, I'm going to call it a white male that's threatened by this divine spirit that is calling forth her true essence. And so now you have been antagonized. So now you're going to throw this on someone else. It baffles the mind. This it's like a deep-seated unawareness that we just all participate in at some level, on some degree. If it's something different from us, or different than an experience that we have lived or that we've known, we want to name it bad. We want to name it not good. We want to name it a threat. And it's like, oh, and my heart just went out to her. I was just like, wow. But, in the Black community, if you're dark skinned, you're not conceivably as beautiful as what we, in my day growing up, a high yellow. High yellow. you got good hair, bad hair.
Yeah.
The
Well,
lips.
yeah.
You know, my mother had beautiful full lips. And at different gatherings when families come together, she used to get flack.
Mhm.
And I was all in it about it. Don't talk about my mama's lips. And this was before I realized that, women are getting Botox to get your lips, mama.
Yeah,
Yours are
exactly.
natural. Thank you for,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. And the whole point is that it's learned behavior. It's learned. We think this is our belief system, but it's not a belief system. It's been learned, taught, and ingrained in us. And so we really need to recognize that and be able to educate ourselves again to unlearn what we've learned.
Yes.
And I think the only way that we can do that is by having some of the same experiences. When I say that, I get goosebumps, because it's also about hearing your experience, like truly understanding what you went through and being able to empathize with that. I'm not able to walk in your shoes, but I can certainly think about how that might have felt for me, to have experienced something like that, how it feels for others to go through and live like that, So for me, the biggest thing I will continue to do is read, learn, participate in anti-racist courses, which I've done some of those, and there's so much more for me to do. And I just want to encourage people to have the courage to do the same, to really read those difficult books. Some people say, oh, I can't read that. Oh my goodness. Well, excuse me, people lived that, so I need to be able to read that so I can understand what people went through, what experiences and what reality was to them. And I don't like them and us, but it's really about understanding what's been done to others. And if we don't do that, we can't be part of the solution. We can't be part of creating the change, which is exactly what you said, Gino. I need to do something. I need to start with me. And if we all did that, if each of us did that and said, I'm going to start with me, that me becomes we.
It
Right?
Yeah, and I love that. I love that idea. And I know for myself, I've done a lot of reading and workshops and stuff also, because it's so important to come to understand. And I've watched films. I watched a very disturbing film that my daughter actually watched at school. It's a short documentary, or a docudrama or something. I'm not sure, but I think it was called Skin, and it was flat out horrific what occurred in that. But it showed that division and the fact that this learned behavior can be such a powerful force when people use it. And when I think about the people who are hating on each other, I think hurt people hurt people.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And so the best thing we can do is notice our own hurts, begin to heal our own self on the inside, so we can come from that we perspective. And I think also acknowledging that every human being on the planet is actually a descendant of one Black woman.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of the story that gets missed, is that somehow, I don't know how I got here, but when humanity started, a way back when, it started somewhere. And it didn't start in Canada. It started in the Middle East and in Africa. So when we look at sort of, and I think actually Africa is the birthplace of humanity.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, our skin lightened as we moved north, or as we, had different experience. But I think we have to really put into perspective, why do we feel the need to make somebody else less than me? I feel good about me if I squash somebody else. Like, what is that? And I think that's a big part of the undoing that we need to really
Yes.
look at.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So beautifully said, both of you, Divine Lights. Really, really beautiful. Um, One of the things that I have brought to our center is a day in history. And I've actually taken it from the Equal Justice Initiative.
Mhm.
And there are people that were offended, that were um, feeling as though this was a target on white people. And I said to one of these divine lights, I said, my love, understand this. This is not Black history. This is our history. I said, it's impossible for you not to have the energy when
Mhm.
your ancestors, what was called a picnic, because it was called pick a nigga, and they would lynch and have like a carnival atmosphere, eating hot dogs and dancing and shooting and
Mhm.
lynching Black people. I said, it's impossible for that not to be a part of
Mhm.
what's running through you. We don't do this by one side healing. Everyone has to heal because, as I've said before, it doesn't just affect what we call race. And I love this when I found this out a couple of months ago. There is no gene for race.
Mhm.
No.
No gene for white. There's no gene for Black or Asian or
Mhm.
Hispanic. We are all have the same freaking genes.
Mhm.
Now,
Exactly.
as you said, some got further away, and so the climate change and the
Yep.
weather and all these different things and the food that you would eat and all of this plays a part into what this physical extremity looks like, this lovely case of us. But
Mhm.
there is no race, there is
Mhm.
no gene race.
Right.
And they have tried for years. Because wouldn't that make life grand?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, that would give a justification, right?
Exactly, exactly. Which is what, when it was um, um, a Spanish writer, um, back in like 1820, 1830, something like that, that was commissioned to write about the slave trade. And in order to make people comfortable, this is one of the things that I read, that this was the first, and I wish I could call his name right now, but this was the first author that brought up the point and made it a race, made the Africans beastly ignorant. They broke down the Asians as being melancholy, yellow. The white Americans, the Northern Americans, were brash, red, and bold, and the European whites were statuous in shape and educated. And so you saw these five, they took the continents
Yeah.
and they broke them apart. And this started this journey to make people feel that, oh, well, if you're one of those, you're not really human. You're different. And
Mhm.
so it said that this helped people, because when you look at people talk about, I'm a Christian, I'm a this, and then you do some of the things that you do, this allowed people to have an
Mhm.
excuse that, well, you're not a part of,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
And we still find that today,
Yeah.
that we're using things. Just briefly, I just saw a thing, and this is a little political, but DeSantos out of Florida, just recently, um, 20 Black people, well, the majority of them are Black or people of color. You know, Florida had the big push to people that had served their time in prison, that as long as you didn't have, you weren't in prison for rape or murder, you could vote. And it was overwhelmingly passed in Florida. And so DeSantis, just a couple of days ago, 20 people that they said broke the law because they were in prison for murder or rape. The way they went and got these people, bringing them out of their house at the crack of dawn in their underwear, the majority of them Black people. And when the story unfolds, as you see, the state sent them voter registration cards telling them that they could vote. And so now they want to go back and say that they broke the law. It's coupled with a few things. It's the one in the way that they bring out Black people. Look at them. They're savage. They're beastly. They don't care. They got helicopters flying over. It's like, this is insane. These people are 53, 55 years old, have done a full stint in jail. That's not their life now. Now, I'm not condoning what they did, but this particular thing, it really looks as though it was a setup. Now you have, on the other hand, where there were Republican voters that were caught voting twice for Trump. They weren't marched out at the crack of dawn from their homes in their underwear. They weren't threatened with jail time. So these inequities, this new form of slavery, which is prison, and our new form of slavery is prison. If we can't see it, let's put it away. Let's they're not human. They're the drug. They're the druggies. They're, just as Trump talked about Hispanic people in such a just horrific way. So we're here. We're here. We're here. And I thank both of you ladies for being courageous enough to have this platform. And everyone that chats and listens and looks, I say to each and every one of you, there is no one answer.
Nope.
But one of the things that is the answer that we've all been saying, that it starts with us, that it starts with you, it starts with me.
Yeah.
And
the big one.
We, me, began to do the work. And you're going to be called in different ways and in different areas. And there'll be some things you understand and some things you don't. But we can't stay where we are.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the important one there, is we have to make a change. It's time to make a change. And in order to do that, we have to begin where we are.
Yes.
Any final words, Miss Cheryl?
Well, I this could start a whole nother conversation, but I'm going to say it anyway. Whatever's happening in the world right now, all the upheaval, all the, the stuff that's coming out, like even with Trump, I'm when he came into power, I was horrified. I'm going to put it out there. And then I had to think to myself, okay, there must be a reason for this. What's happening is that everything we thought had been dealt with, like, oh no, there's no racism, there's no that, there's no that. Well, you know what? He just stirred the pot and it's bubbling over. And so thank God for that, because it gives us something to address and to acknowledge and to be able to change. Because if we don't acknowledge it, if we don't see it, we can't change it.
Exactly. We got about 20 seconds left. Gino, final words, final thought?
It is a blessing to come together and have uncomfortable conversations. I thank you. I applaud you. And I love you. I miss you, baby. I miss you. I hope to see you in November.
I hope so too. I hope so too. We're gonna make it happen. And I just want to say it's time. It's time, people. There's one thing going on. We're all some part of it. Let's come together as the family that we truly are. I love you, Gino. I love you, Cheryl. Love all of you who are here.
Deja, it was so good to see you. I miss you.
Bye, everybody. This is Spirit Cafe signing off.
Bye.